I'm back, and today I'm going to make a simple home blessing. But before I do, I wanted to say this. Every time I do one of these, then I edit it and I think, oh, I should have said this and I should have done that. And I have to remind myself that my goal here is not to be a cooking show, not to be an herbal medicine, holistic, or or homeopathic medicine, and not to be the witch's spell book and here's how to do it. My goal here is to show how all these pieces tie together so that the simple everyday stuff, you begin to use it with a different awareness. So if you're watching this and you go, well, she left out this, she left out that, don't forget, it's about tying things together. Okay, so this is a simple home blessing. 4 humble spices: parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. If you're humming the song Scarborough Fair, there are many versions of it out there. My personal favorite, and I'm sure I'm not alone, Simon and Garfunkel's Scarborough Fair, is they did that, but it's based on an extremely old English folk ballad that's at least 400 years old, and most likely there are references to these herbs in that sort of context, not the song itself, but that context, that go back to the Middle Ages, about 800 years ago. So, these herbs have been around a long time. These are pretty classic spices. When you think of spices in our world today, immediately you think of salt and pepper. It's on everybody's table. That's actually fairly new that it was easily accessed. Salt and pepper themselves have been around a long time. However, they were hard to access and expensive, so most people couldn't have them. They didn't have them. They couldn't get them, couldn't pay for them. What they did have was herbs that they grew themselves outside the back door in the kitchen garden. And these 4, parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme, are 4 of the most common ones. They've been around a long time. And over time, every girl, every woman was raised to know that they had kitchen uses, but they also had medical uses, and it would become part of the medical book of what you needed to know. And of course, over time, they have energies in them that people began to see. So you get your basic house blessing: parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Let's look at each one. Nothing ties the 3 aspects, cooking, medicine, and magic, together more than these 4 humble little herbs. So, parsley. I will say this, I'm not going to go into recipes with each herb. Anybody who cooks knows that each herb is unique. They add their own special flavors to food. Each spice, you decide what you want to do with it. If you're cooking any kind of poultry, go for the sage. Pork loves rosemary. It goes on and on. So I just wanted to say I'm not going to get too particular about cooking, other than to point out people have been cooking with these for centuries. Medically, however, let's start with parsley. I'm going to put that in my house blessing because medically, as part of a homeopathic, holistic kitchen or medicine cabinet, it is a diuretic. It helps detox your system. And I've got something else to say about the humble parsley in a minute. Sage. Sage has its own medical properties. It's called a digestif. In other words, it helps you digest your food. In other words, you won't get so much gas. It's very good for that. Rosemary. I love rosemary. Rosemary helps cleanse your food. It's energetic. It promotes memory, good memory, and it's good for your circulatory system. And those everyone who uses it in cooking knows it's got a little heat in it, which is good for you. And finally, thyme. Thyme. So humble. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's an antiseptic. It's an antiviral. It's an antifungal. In other words, not quite so humble, is it? So you put that into your house blessing. Now, let's go backwards. Thyme. What energies are you putting in? Well, think about all the things it does medically. It's a cleanser. And it also purifies the air. It's a cleanser. Rosemary. Oh, yes. No. Yeah. Rosemary. Rosemary is excellent for drawing the passions of life into your world. Sage, and I used up all my sage, I must get more. Sage. Sage, again, is a time-honored cleanser. It's excellent on poultry. It's good for your digestive system. In other words, it cleanses things. And finally, parsley. You know, the Romans used to put a sprig of parsley on their plate so that the food wouldn't get contaminated. It's a protector. But think about that. Even today, a sprig of parsley is a lovely garnish. Isn't that nice? It's pretty. Here's a note. At the end of the meal, eat that parsley. It cleanses the breath. It's a cleanser, a purifier, and a protector. So, 4 humble herbs, people have been using them a long time. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Been part of a song. So, tie them all together. Now that gets to your choice of cloth. I am not that picky. Some people would say, oh, you must use natural cloth. I don't really have an opinion strongly one way or the other, but I will say this. The natural fibers, and there are 4 basic ones, all have energies built into them, whereas synthetic fibers don't. There's nothing built into it already. So I'm okay with using synthetic fibers. The only thing I would say about the cloth is make sure it's breathable, because you want the essence of those herbs sprinkling through your entire home. Now, after that, you tie it with a ribbon. The color choice of ribbon and cloth is totally up to you. Kind of depends on what you want to bless your home with. I've chosen Dusty Rose because, and colors, by the way, they're actually not that different across the globe. There are some notable exceptions, but there's not that much difference in color correspondences. I chose Dusty Rose because I'm trying to bring in the essence of love to spread through my whole home so that it's a loving home. When you're all done, you tie it up, hang it. Traditionally, you hang it in the heart of the home. That used to be the kitchen around the cooking hearth. That's kind of up to you what you think the heart of the home is. In our modern world, it may be over the TV. The entertainment center. I tend to hang mine over my window over the kitchen sink. So the heart of the home, and just let it hang there and let those 4 humble little herbs spread their energy, cleansing, drawing, purifying, protecting, loving, and bringing a little passion, the things you want in a home. So, a home blessing wrapped by a simple country wit.